Hello, I'm Anna Pumo, and I'm now doing Lab 3, the Bacterial Enumeration, Dilutions, and Plate Counts, Biology 225. Pre-set up everything. I've washed my hands, put my gloves on, I have my mask, my goggles on, my apron. I have my 10% bleach solution in case there's a spill, and I also have my 100% bleach solution for after when I'm done. Bring this down a little bit. You can see more things this way, I think. So, yep, 70% isopropyl alcohol for sterilizing my pipette. I have the agar, the 6 agar plates ready to go for the second part of this lab. I have my test tubes labeled 10.1 through 10.6, and I have my yeast, which has already begun to dissolve and get going. So a 1/4 teaspoon of yeast with 2 tablespoons of warm water added. The 10-minute timer has already started. I have my distilled water. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get my pipette away from my agar. So that is sterilized. So I will be adding 2.25 mLs of distilled water to each test tube. Let that alcohol out, let it dry. So I believe that 2.25 is going to be about half of this 5 ml, so I'm going to do it that way. So loading up this pipette with hopefully 2.25. It needs a little bit more than that. I think that's going to be about right. It's almost half of that, of the pipette there. So I'll be adding that to each test tube. Distilled water. It's about half. If I don't touch them, they should stay upright. And I shouldn't be touching them anyway. That was good. I hope you can see okay. I think so. And there's about half again. So pipette did well this time, or I don't know, but that is distilled water, 2.25 mLs added to each test tube. About 3 minutes left. I don't think I'm supposed to cut and paste these videos, so we could talk a little bit about, well, I'm not really sure. I'm going to go ahead and I think my next thing I want to do is, I guess I'm just going to put my pipette back in the alcohol and see if this is frothing yet. Not quite. give it a few more minutes. So my cat is in the laundry room. He's not crying. He's gotten very content with the laundry room. He has a little bed, he has food. He's good. He's got a little play toy in there. Well, I could have gotten my yeast ready in advance. I thought I would be taking longer here, but that went smoothly. So just waiting for this yeast to froth. I'm not really sure if that's going to happen. Yeah, a little bit. Got a little bit of froth on there. You see that? Getting there. That just another minute, a minute and a half, and then we'll get that going. That is going to be 0.25 mLs of yeast added to the 10-1. So I need to be careful here. I've got 10-1, 2, and 3 on the back side of my test tube rack. So I'm going to go, I need to add 0.25 mLs, which is 8 drops. Figured that out. So I'm going to do 8 drops of the yeast to 10-1, and then I will move on from 10, then take from 10-1, 0.25, which will be 8 drops. That's going to be kind of tough, but I'm going to do my best to keep that as accurate as possible, and only go from one test tube to the next. That's about 45 more seconds for this yeast, and I think I'll be ready to go with that. And then in the second part, I'll be doing 0.0125 ml, 0.125 mLs, that's 4 drops. So the drops is nice. You don't have to try to see what's going on in that pipette. That's a little bit, that's a little hard to see the measurements. So that's our 10 minutes on the yeast. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with my 8 drops. Getting all my alcohol out of that distilled water. Still a little distilled water into my alcohol. I think that's okay, but I just wanted to get a little water rinse on that pipette. Put the alcohol there and the water and the distilled water. Let that dry a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and get, best I can, 8 drops of the yeast into test tube 10-1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to go ahead and just put that back in the yeast. And I am going to go ahead and clean this up. I think the distilled water, I'll use that to get that out. I'm going to move this over and keep the alcohol over by the bleach there. So that's pretty cleaned out. So 10-1 has 8 drops of yeast added. I'm going to swirl that. Okay, 10-1, 10-1. I'm going to go ahead and add, just get a little bit from there. And I'm going to go to test tube 10-2 and take from 10-1, add it 0.25 mLs, which will be 8 drops, to 10-2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to go ahead and just, again, kind of clean that out. I know the distilled water is getting a little. Clean that out as best I can. Now taking from 10-2, well, we're going to swirl that around a little bit. So diluting each of these test tubes more and more. That was kind of a lot. Let's see, got a good. Put that back. I'm on to 10-3. I'm taking from 10-2, 0.25 mLs, and that's going to be 8 drops into test tube 10-3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Rinse that again in the distilled water. Give that a good rinse. Now taking from test tube 3, adding to 10-4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drops. From test tube 4, I'm going to test tube 5, and I will add 8 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Swirl that a little bit. Everything's falling. Rinse that out again. And then from test tube 10-5 to test tube 10-6, 8 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is done. One of the things, I'm not sure, if I should have been rinsing that each time or not. I feel like it, otherwise I think I would have carried over too many. I wouldn't have diluted it enough, I think, if I had just carried it over without rinsing the pipette. Again, would be great to ask you some questions, but that is done, and hopefully by the time we get to 10-6, there's something left in there and we can see the colonies. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second part. I'm going to move this back here. Those are going to be, actually, we're going to dispose of those, but I have the agar. Agar plates are here, labeled yeast 10-1 through 10-6. So I'll go ahead and take off the tops of each one. I think what I'll do is go ahead and just, everything stayed pretty clean. I didn't spill this time. I'm going to wash my hands, get some new gloves. And go ahead and add to the agar now with the pipette from the first test tube, 10-1. Be adding 4 drops, which is 0.125 mLs. To bring this down again. Okay. I think I can see better now. So this is still rinsing in the distilled water, this pipette that I had used, so I'll just that all rinsed out. So here is test tube 10-1, so that has the most yeast organisms in it. So I'll go ahead and suck some of that up with my pipette. I'm going to add 4 drops to each.
Plate.
I'm sorry, I'm going to do 10-1 test tube into 10-1 agar plate. 4 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 10-1 is done. I'm actually going to go ahead and just dump that out into the yeast. That test tube is done. Then from 10-2, I'm going to do 0.125 mLs from the test tube into the agar, both corresponding. 10-2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dump that test tube yeast into the yeast cup. Now doing 10-3 to 10-3 agar plate. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is done. Rinsing out my pipette each time. 10-4. Yep, we're going to go into 10-4. Agar plate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dump that test tube into the original yeast cup. And then 10-5, 4 drops into the 10-5 agar plate. 2, 3, 4. And that into the yeast cup. Rinse the pipette. And then 10-6, test tube labeled 10-6, into the agar plate labeled 10-6. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, dump that in. So I'm going to just swirl these around to cover all of that agar. Hard to see with these glasses on. This is going to sit for 12 hours the way that it is, with the agar on the bottom, so that the organisms have an opportunity to implant themselves or to settle into that agar. Moving that around a little bit. And then in 12 hours, I'll flip them over and keep them upside down, inverted, for 36 hours. And then continue with the experiment from there. So just making sure that there is covering the whole surface of the agar of each one. that is working and getting it all over the surface. Get in there. And the last one, just moving that all over the surface of that agar. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in my incubating closet, just the way that it is in this pan. I think that's pretty safe. And in 12 hours, I will check on it. Well, not check on it. I'm just going to flip them all over, let them sit another 36 hours, and then continue and then report on the results. Thank you. Have a good rest of your weekend.